All right, well, good day, everyone. My name is Lucas Quanstrom, the co-founder and CEO of Ontic Technologies. And we might sound a little different than some of the stuff you've heard today, although a great presentation so far. Because what Ontic exists to do is we exist to empower the people who actually protect individuals from acts of violence. And unfortunately, in this day and age, while random acts of violence is actually down in the US, targeted acts of violence is on the rise. Whether it's in the workplace, our institution, our schools, these acts of violence continue to increase. As well, there's a shift in accountability. It's not just a law enforcement problem at this point in time. Our stakeholders are demanding accountability from schools, from the places in which we work and live. And what also exists at this point in time, alongside that shift in accountability, is a massive rise in terms of the amount of data we now have access to, right? Every one of us is carrying more data in our pocket today than anyone here could have ever projected. What's the combination of these two factors is we now have the ability to see through technology about 3/4 of pre-incident indicators for acts of violence. Acts of violence are not random. Someone just doesn't snap necessarily. Rather, there are pre-incident indicators for some type of bad behavior well before that event, right? And now we have the ability to see that ahead of time. Yet, frustratingly, a lot of our solutions tend to focus on what I like to call walls, weapons, and whispers, further fortification, reactive solutions to the problem or point of need, weaponized approaches to counteracting violence, or hoping that someone says something or we hear something ahead of an act of violence. With the rise of data that we have today, with that fact I mentioned that we now have 72% of pre-incident indicators detectable with technology, we have the ability to be proactive, to get ahead of this, to actually go help and resource these threat actors ahead of them becoming a problem to someone else or even to themselves as it relates to suicide or self-hurt. So ultimately, that's what we do at Ontic Technologies. We are a software-based company that stores a lot of intelligence, a lot of data, but then aggregates on top of that signals that give indication of some type of threatening activity that we want to help mitigate. Whether that's a common one is open source social media or dark web monitoring, looking for conversations that are uncomfortable or unproductive. It could be public records. Getting into criminal activity is one thing, but ultimately a lot of these threat actors, it's not just criminal activity. It's a bankruptcy. It's a divorce. There's a lot of liens. It's financial pressure that become a trigger event for an act of violence. As well, leveraging facial recognition and license plate reading to look for patterns of behavior that this isn't a usual pattern. They shouldn't be here this many times, or they shouldn't be in this location. What's happening here? And finally, customer data stores where we can integrate with HR systems of record. We can integrate with school information systems to look for patterns, behaviors, degradation in terms of grades, academic performance, in terms of attendance, unexcused absences combined with other students as well. What's happening with these patterns, right? We can help see these things and mitigate potential threat to the student or to someone else. We call it protective intelligence management, so we have the ability to detect these signals and perform a variety of capabilities on top of them. Understanding who's behind a particular threat, understanding where that threat may be present, the location of that threat, understanding the propensity for violence or risk behavior and getting into open source, understanding the mode and means of an individual. Do they have the ability to carry out an act of violence on themselves or someone else? And ultimately, this is what security professionals are able to leverage to provide more insight, to make smarter decisions as it relates to protecting their principals, the people that they want to keep safe. So just one story about how this comes to life in the real world with L Brands, large corporation you might know of in Columbus area. One particular use case I can share is they have a corporate campus with people that come and park and work there all the time. The security teams there notice a vehicle that has kind of an unusual pattern of lingering, right? They didn't drop anyone off, they didn't pick anyone up, they've been seen frequenting the campus. If they have the ability to run those plates through a US record, they could see those plates come back clean. They actually didn't even have that ability to run those plates on the spot. However, with Ontic, they can run that plate, and within seconds, we connect that plate to an address. That address is connected to someone who was terminated 3 weeks ago and left and made threats to the business, saying, "This isn't the last you'll hear from me, I'll be back." So now the security professionals are armed with knowledge on how to mitigate a threat to others or to that person, and handle that situation much more appropriately than they would have without that insight. So there's many stories I can share. I'm happy I'll be around. We've got one more left, and I can talk more about what we're doing at Ontic. But again, I'm Lucas Quanstrom, CEO of Ontic. We exist to empower the people that protect people. Thanks so much.